I came out of the psychologist's office with some pills in my hands. I was told it would help, but I felt nothing but despair. How could drugs bring back the meaning of life? Just recently I was fired and my girlfriend left me for another guy. I had nothing to live for anymore. I left the office and immediately threw the prescription and pills in the trash. I had only one choice left. I resolutely opened the window and looked down. It was so high. I thought for a moment, but I had nothing to lose. I stood on the windowsill and was about to jump when someone grabbed my arm and dragged me down the corridor. There were some nurses. "Hey, let me go!" I tried to pull away. One of them had a handkerchief put in my face and my vision went dark, and after just a few seconds, I blacked out. I woke up in a terrible room, in a padded cell. Was this a mental hospital? I tried to get up, but I was tied to a chair. What was going on? Then the three nurses came out of the darkness. One of them was a beauty who looked like an actress. The second had round glasses like a nerd. And the third had fiery red hair. In my mind, I started calling them Beauty, Nerdy, and Redhead. They calmly explained that they had overheard my conversation with a psychologist. I was perfect for the experiment. I didn't understand anything. They had tied me up and now they were smiling. Their smile sent shivers down my spine. I immediately ordered them to untie me, but the nurses began to chirp sweetly that they had a method for returning the meaning of life. If the experiment worked, we would save all of the humanity from depression. There was only one condition: to stay in this room for 3 days. I got it. They were nuts, but they snapped. Either 3 days here or in an asylum. I had no choice. I even pretended to be grateful for their treatment. If only they would leave as soon as possible, and I got out of here. Then the girls parted. Behind them was a large monitor, on which I saw myself live. The experiment would be watched by millions of viewers, they said. Was this a reality show? They should be locked up in an asylum, not me. I was okay with the treatment, but the show? It was just too much. I tried to pull away, but the knots were too tight. Suddenly, one of the nurses' phones rang and they were going to work. "Yo, untie me at least!" Redhead came up to me, pulled gently on the rope, and the knot was untied. She winked at me. "Don't be bored. We'll be back soon." As soon as they left, I started looking around. There was only one way out: the door. The rest of the room was covered with cameras and the monitor glared at me from the wall. I went over to it and saw that there was a chat box down below where people were discussing me and liking me. I didn't understand how this was supposed to give me back the meaning of life. What if they wanted to kill me for the public's pleasure? I needed to get out of here. I tried to break down the door, but as soon as I touched it, I was electrocuted. I'll be curling up on the floor in tremendous pain. When I came to my senses, I saw hundreds of enthusiastic comments. "Do you like it then when a person is in pain?" And then it hit me. I had to first of all please the public, then the nasty nurses will let me go. All day I wandered in this room alone, my mind filled with memories of the past. I worked as a banker. I had enough money for myself and my girlfriend, but suddenly our staff was reduced and I was left without a job. As soon as the money ran out, my girlfriend left me. Life lost its meaning and I decided to go to the doctor. But if I knew how it would turn out, I would have just stayed at home. The slam of the door snapped me out of my reverie. One of the nurses came to see me. Beauty. She was wearing a gorgeous dress and there was a box in her hands from which she began to take out candles, dinner, and wine. What's happening though? Is she hitting on me? Suddenly, the nurse approached the camera and said, "Dear friends, the experiment has begun. Before your eyes, we will give you this guy back his meaning of life." Beauty sat down at the table next to me and began to ask me about my past and about my relationship. I didn't want to talk about it, but then I noticed that she was twirling her hair with her finger. Was she flirting? It looked like they had decided to hit on me to make me forget my girlfriend who left me. You thought I'd buy that damn dinner and her outfit? I ignored the nurse's stupid questions until the last minute, and she acted like the conversation was going great. What nonsense! I got tired of listening to her chatter, and I put my dinner plate aside. I won't eat anything until you release me. But Beauty only laughed horribly. What's so funny? She said I wouldn't be released for the next 3 days anyway. If I didn't want to eat, that was my right. I defiantly threw the plate on the floor, hitting the candle, but it fell on the tablecloth and it caught fire. In an instant, the table was engulfed in flames. Beauty jumped up in horror. Immediately, the door opened and Nerdy ran into us in a panic. They were nervously trying to put out the fire. This was my chance. The door was open! In the confusion, I got up from the table and went to the exit, but Beauty noticed that I was about to leave. Heck, I took off and ran to the exit, but at that moment, Redhead appeared in the hallway. Two nurses standing behind her, looking like bouncers in a nightclub. I tried to pull away, but the bouncers grabbed me tightly. Redhead grinned. "How far are you going?" And then she reminded me, "If you don't want to participate, an asylum is waiting for you, but they will quickly return the meaning of life." She ran her hand gently over my cheek. "Get your hands off me." I couldn't handle these big guys, so I had to go back into the room. The nurses put the fire out and hurriedly left, slamming the door behind them. I had spent the whole day bored out of my mind when I heard the nurses talking behind the wall. I leaned my ear against the wall and listened to them talking in whispers outside that very door. Beauty noted that at that moment when I started the fire, the number of viewers doubled. They were very happy. The more viewers, the more money they would get. So they also earned money from me? I wanted to smash the monitor and hit it with all my strength, but it was shockproof. I pounded on the monitor for a few minutes until I noticed the comments. People admired me so much. I read hundreds of comments in my support. They loved me. If it wasn't for me, there wouldn't be any hits. And then it dawned on me. People like my outrage. Good. Then tomorrow, I would surprise them with even more. These nurses were going to regret choosing me for their shitty experiment. The next day, Nerdy came into my room. She had paints and brushes in her hands. The nurses brought a huge easel into the room. I would draw you something. The nurse asked me to draw a still life, and along the way, she talked to me about art. I was very polite and actively engaged in the dialogue. I could see in her eyes that she was proud of herself. Well, now you'll see what I'll draw. Done. Only it was not a still life, but a cartoon in which I depicted the nurse as a complete freak. When she saw the scarecrow with a huge nose I painted, her joy was gone. The nurse started crying and ran away, covering her face. I showed my creation to the camera and saw on the monitor positive comments. I was going to be a star at this rate. Even though I was trapped, I felt much better. With the third nurse, I decided to pretend to be in love so that I would definitely be released at the end of this stupid experiment. In the evening, Redhead came to me. Unlike the others, she had nothing with her. I wonder what they had come up with this time. Redhead said the nurses were upset after my antics and she decided not to flirt with me in any way, but just to play charades because she was bored. I never expected this. We played for a few hours and again I masterfully pretended to be interested. I jumped and made faces, showing animals. But I had to admit that it was easy for me to pretend with Redhead. She was the most sincere of all. She joked a lot. We really seemed to be having fun. When Redhead wanted to leave, I asked her to come back tomorrow and have a normal date. I said I liked it. Redhead was embarrassed and left. I immediately ran to watch the monitor. I knew that the audience would like how I played the lover. The ratings soared to the skies. The audience asked to kiss her tomorrow. Well, if you want, I'll do it. The next day, Redhead came in a beautiful dress. I think she liked me too. She said her name was Susan. We chatted and laughed for a long time. All I had to do was kiss her and pretend that the experiment was a success. The meaning of life had returned, and I could finally get myself out of here. I went to kiss her. At that moment, my heart fluttered, and I was acting so well that for a second, I thought I was in love. But then, two other nurses ran into the room. What were they doing here? They congratulated me that everything went according to their plan. They gave me meaning back, because I fell in love with Susan. How naive. You think they'd care about my life, not the money from the life. I stood up proudly and declared that the meaning of life had really returned to me. Not because I fell in love with Susan, but because I liked being the star of their blog. The nurses looked at each other in shock. Of course, they did not expect such a turn. Eat it. I've been playing along with you all this time. They came at me menacingly. What will you do to me, huh? We're live. I pushed past the nurses and headed for the exit. 3 days had passed. I was leaving. I announced that I would now open my channel and turn to face the camera. Guys, thank you for these days. Subscribe to my channel and you can unsubscribe from these manipulators. Since then, I am one of the most popular bloggers in the country. Thanks to this story, I realized if it seems that everything is bad and there is no way out, do not despair. After all, life is about change, and after the rain, the sun always shines.
That day, my friend Oliver dragged me to a restaurant to meet a rich businessman who had money to invest in our startup. The businessman agreed to give us 5 minutes of his time. We looked like rich people. Chic suits, high-status watches. We ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu. But it was all fake. The watches were replicas and the suits were for rent. Oliver pawned his grandmother's ring so that we could have dinner here. They'll find us out for sure. The businessman still didn't show up, and I was about to leave when a girl came up to our table. How pretty she was. It turned out that we had been booked at the same table by mistake. Oliver immediately invited the girl to join us. She said yes. I haven't had a nice relationship with a girl in a long time, therefore, what if this was my chance? Her name was Harriet. She was supposed to have dinner with a friend, but she just canceled their meeting. We got talking, and in order to not lose my face, I said that I come to this restaurant, constantly. Like I went to a good college and that we have our own business, which brings in a lot of money. You should have seen Oliver's face. I was so used to playing a rich guy that I didn't recognize myself. By the end of the evening, I was so emboldened that I asked Harriet to meet again, and she agreed. And the rich guy didn't show up for the meeting, so it seemed like he wasn't gonna waste his time on us at all. On the way home, Oliver kept talking about the business, and that we could do it without being rich. Our project would start making money soon, but, of course, I didn't listen to him. I only thought about her. Oliver understood everything from my stupid smile, and he immediately decided to break off my whole buzz. A gorgeous girl has gorgeous requests, he confidently stated, and unfortunately, he was right, because I lied to her about everything. I have no bank account, no education, and the only thing I have is our startup. The date was set for the next day, but I wasn't gonna back it up no matter what. When I got home, my mother was already asleep. I moved in with her when her health got worse. The doctors said that they needed a kidney transplant. After my dad died, I had to take care of my mother, and I wanted to make her happy. We sold almost everything, but in the end, we collected the necessary amount, and now all that was left was to wait in line for the surgery. Soon, Harriet texted me. She thanked me for dinner and said that she loved the lobsters. Man, I set the bar too high. I started searching through the cabinets for anything else that could be quickly sold to raise at least some money, and I came across a box with my mother's stash for surgery. No, stop. The idea of taking money from there was very bad. And I hope Harriet doesn't just like me because I'm allegedly a rich dude. The next day, I took Harriet to the park and gave her a bunch of daisies. She asked, "Is this a joke?" Harriet was ready to leave, and I was scared. I lied that this was a hoax, and the real date would be at my favorite restaurant. We took a taxi, and I made up an excuse to stop near my house. I said I was helping the poor, and I needed to check on one of them. Harriet said it was very nice, but she'd rather wait in the car. Phew, close call. I flew into the apartment and reached into the closet for the stash. "I'll pay you back. Honestly, I hope Mom doesn't notice anything." At the restaurant, Harriet cheered up, and I was very happy about it. And days went by, and Harriet was really happy, because I always gave her expensive gifts. A week later, she started inviting me to hang out with her richy friends. The rich world just blinded me. But I kept thinking that the money was running out. One day, Oliver called me and told me that we were finally rich. Of course, he was joking, but yeah. The startup brought in the first money, which means that I will return everything I took from my mother's stash. But my entire share of the profit had been spent on an expensive bracelet for Harriet, which she begged for the same day. She was thrilled, and at the end of the evening, she invited me to a family dinner. She said that she had serious feelings for me, which meant it was time to meet her parents. Wow, I was beginning to think that she was only with me for the money. But getting to know your parents is an important step. Such trust. X day has arrived. We went to Harriet's parents' house, but I couldn't find a place for myself. I thought they'd figured me out in a heartbeat. In the end, it turned out to be much worse than I imagined. First, her family lived in a mansion, where I felt uncomfortable. And secondly, her dad immediately flooded me with questions. Where I studied, who I work for, and what I do in life. I had to repeat the usual lie. I study at a prestigious college and work on a successful project. Harriet's mother immediately liked me, but her father looked at me suspiciously. After dinner, Harriet showed me to the house. Her father had a fancy office. We talked in the luxurious chairs, and for the first time that evening, I relaxed a little. Suddenly, Harriet got up and went to the safe. She asked me to be quiet. She was going to borrow some money from her dad. As I understand it, her father didn't spoil Harriet with money, so she stole it from his safe, a little at a time. What a familiar situation. I watched as she fearfully dialed the numbers on her father's safe. It was strange that such a large amount of money was kept under the PIN code 1111. When we said goodbye to Harriet's parents, her father took me aside and asked if I had prepared a gift for Harriet. Her birthday was coming up. I immediately lied that I had a necklace with large rubies. As luck would have it, Harriet heard this and started thanking me. What have I done? Where will I get the money from? I was as dark as a cloud when I got home, and then my mother decided to finish me off completely. She will get surgery in 2 days. The doctor called and said that there was a free place. They just needed her consent. Mother was so happy. She started to hug me, but I snapped at her. This stupid surgery was completely out of time. My mother asked what was wrong with me, but I just mumbled that everything was fine and ran into the room. I couldn't sleep at night. How could I get the money in 2 days? There was no point in asking Oliver, since he was handing over bottles to buy noodles to feed himself. The next morning, I went to several banks, but none of them wanted to give a loan to a ragamuffin with a weird startup. I was so desperate that I even considered robbing a bank. Stop. Harriet's rich dad wouldn't even notice if a few pathetic $1,000s go missing from his safe. The safe is full of money, and I remember the code. Why didn't I think of this before? I started preparing for the robbery. I made a mask out of the hat and figured out how to get around the cameras and security. That night, I went to Harriet's house. Luck was on my side. I waited until a couple of thugs had moved away from the wall and jumped over it. But there was a real giant with my club. My heart almost jumped out of my chest. As soon as he was gone, I ran to the front of the door. The office was on the second floor, where I crept on tiptoe. My hands were shaking with excitement as I typed in the code on the safe. That's it, Steve. There's no turning back. Now, you're not only a liar, but also a thief. When the safe was opened, I quickly stuffed the money into my pockets and went on the stairs. I was about to go down to the first floor, but Harriet's father was standing right next to me. Damn it! I tried to slip past him, but he heard footsteps and noticed me. The old man tried to grab hold of me and pulled off the mask. I fearfully rushed away and hit him with my shoulder, not on purpose. In the next second, he was falling head over heels. Suddenly, I heard a crunch. I wanted to see if he was all right, but there was no time. I might be caught, and I ran away. On the way home, I told myself that he had hurt himself and nothing terrible had happened to him, but I definitely got caught. He saw my face and he must have recognized me. Harriet called me the next morning. She cried for a long time and said that her father was attacked at night. My heart skipped a beat, and my hands shook with excitement. Suddenly, he had something to say. I nervously asked if the cameras caught the attacker, but I was lucky because Harriet said you couldn't see his face and that her father was in a coma, but the doctors didn't tell them to hope for the best. God, how lucky I am. If only she knew that her father was in a coma because of me. I was so scared that I even thought of turning myself into the police, but I knew it would only make things worse for everyone. I had to wait for Harriet's dad to wake up. Wait, what if he doesn't remember anything and everything will just be as before? My mother's surgery went successfully, and she didn't notice the loss of money. We wanted this for so long, and I couldn't even be happy for my own mother. Oliver and I were already making good money in our business, and within a few days, I had quietly returned the stolen money to Harriet's father's safe. I was on pins and needles for a few weeks. I wanted Harriet to leave me alone, but in such a difficult situation, she needed support and gifts again. And then Harriet's father woke up. I did not want to go in to see him at all. But Harriet said he wasn't thinking straight, and he wasn't talking right now. She asked me to come, and I agreed. Her father looked bad. He could barely breathe, but he still found the strength to sit up and point a finger at me, whispering, "You." Fortunately, he didn't have time to finish. His eyes rolled back, and his mouth foamed. The doctors tried to resuscitate him. As we sat in the waiting room, Harriet anxiously waited for her father to get better, and I knew I was finished. I needed a distraction, so I suggested a snack. I brought us sandwiches and instant coffee from the vending machine. Last supper on the loose. Harriet was acting up again, and haughtily said that she didn't eat gluten. Who would doubt it? Suddenly, the doctor came out of the room and mournfully looked at Harriet. They couldn't do anything. Harriet slid to the floor and sobbed. At this moment, her mother rushed into the hospital. She ran up to her daughter and began to calm her down. 2 states were fighting in me. I hated myself for what I had done. Even if it was an accident, I killed a man. Although, on the other hand, it was difficult to contain my joy, because no one would know my terrible secret. I took one last look at poor Harriet and left the hospital, and that was the end. We never met again. I went too far for her.